As tensions continue to escalate over U.S. imported tariffs on Canadian goods, the ripple effects are being felt well beyond political chambers and manufacturing plants. In communities built on cross border cooperation and cultural exchange, the impact is growing more personal and more painful by the day. Nowhere is this more evident than in Niagara Falls, a world renowned destination that typically thrives on steady flow of American visitors. But this year, the crowds are noticeably thinner. Hotel bookings are down, storefronts are quieter, and long standing businesses that depend on tourism are starting to sound the alarm. To understand just how deeply this issue is hitting home, we now turn to someone on the front lines of this crisis. I'm joined by Niagara Falls Mayor Jim Diodati. Mr. Diodati, thank you so much for the time today.
Thanks for having me, Theresa.
Now, I want to start with just how much money U.S. tourists bring into Niagara Falls.
Well, typically in Niagara Falls, 14 million people travel. That would be about 25% American. They do typically spend more than the average Canadian, and they stay a little bit longer. So it'd be approximately $1 billion a year of GDP in Niagara Falls from U.S. visitation.
And how much is that down this year?
Well, the numbers, we're still in the midst of the
Right.
season, but it's somewhere right now between 10 and 15%. I mean, last year was a record year. So, I mean, we are comparing ourselves to a very high number, but we're still concerned. I mean, we prepare, and we thought because of the exchange, this could be our greatest year ever. And
Right.
potentially it could have been. Also, the beginning of the weather cycle was very challenging as well. So we have a lot of things working against us geopolitically. The environment, we got a lot of things happening at one time. But on the flip side, the positive side, a lot of Canadians are choosing to do staycations. Because of the exchange rate, Americans are coming because their dollar goes farther. Canadians are staying because their dollar obviously doesn't go so far in the United States. So we're feeling the impact right now. We're concerned. And, whenever there's uncertainty, people get a little bit uptight.
Well, concern and uncertainty, but at what point do you start to sound the alarm? At what point do you think I need to step in and something needs to be done?
Well, I think this is much above my pay grade. This is going to be Prime Minister Carney. This is going to be the 13 premiers. I know they just got together in Deerhurst the last couple of days, and this is exactly what they're dealing with. Because geopolitically, right now, Canadians aren't feeling welcomed in the United States. And it's funny because I've met with a number of Americans, and when I ask them where they're from, they hesitate to say. And they'll say, USA, America, and they're waiting for me to react. And I said, how great to have you here. We're glad you're here. And they think we're mad at them. They don't understand that the anger is directed at the president for his mercurial ways and his poor decisions and bad judgment. And we tell them this. In fact, the opening of the Shaw this year, we had Minister Stan Cho, Minister of Tourism and Gaming, and he opened up the Shaw Festival. And he said, how many are Americans? About 30% put their hands up. And he said, we say elbows out, but arms up, arms out. And he said, we welcome you. We're glad you're here. We're rolling out the red carpet. Thank you for being here. And afterwards, I spoke with a number of Americans, and they're a little hesitant to say where they were from. I talked to a couple from Ohio, and I said, I'm so glad you're here. And they felt so good because they love Canadians. Americans love Canada, but they're feeling a little funny about coming right now because of what's happening politically.
Well, and I think it's important to break that miscommunication and misunderstanding and break down that it's not Americans that Canadians are mad at, it's the policies and it's what could potentially happen to Canada. But I do want to highlight, you mentioned that you were in Deerhurst at the Premier's meeting. What was the vibe of that meeting? And what would you say was one of the key takeaways while you were speaking with some premiers?
Well, Theresa, I would say the biggest takeaway is the importance of unity and nation building projects. It wasn't since the 1800s when we built the CP railway across Canada, and it really stitched together all these territories and provinces into a country. And we need more of these kind of projects. And the fact that, number one, Premier Ford was able to get Prime Minister Carney to get there, and they had all of the 13 premiers together. And obviously, I wasn't part of those discussions, but I did speak with some of the people that were in those discussions, and it's obvious we need to come together. And part of our challenge, we've been slow to action on some of these major projects, and they need to come up, whether it's archaeological consultations with First Nations, they need to have a faster process to expedite if we're going to do this. They also said, during challenge and adversity, there are seeds of opportunity. I think Plato said necessity is the mother of invention. And there could be huge opportunities for Canada to diversify our economy and to have trade relations with other partners besides the United States. And I think that was the feeling. We need major projects, national in nature, expedited, and open up new markets. And if that means pipelines where we could sell our oil to other countries at full retail, not the discounted rate we sell to the American refineries, there'll be much more opportunities. So there's a lot of optimism, a lot of excitement, and they know what they're dealing with. They're dealing with a mercurial person. He's hard to judge. You don't know if his word's going to be good, or if he's going to change his mind tomorrow. It's hard to negotiate. So we don't expect there to be any major changes until American Thanksgiving, but they're shooting for the August 1st deadline. We'll see how things play out.
Well, Premier Ford has been the driving force in that Team Canada approach. We need to make change so that the United States doesn't walk all over the country. What is your take on Premier Ford? He actually made the comment. He's made this comment a few times, but he came out yesterday and said that he still stands with dollar for dollar reciprocal tariffs. What do you make of those comments?
Well, first thing I'll say is Premier Ford has been an incredible leader. Even before we had a prime minister officially, he's still a leader of the leaders. And he's a business person who did a lot of work in the United States, and he understands how Americans work. Obviously, he's a feisty guy and he's a fighter, and he wants to fight dollar for dollar. I don't think I'd want to get into that kind of debate or a battle with someone much bigger. They're the elephant and we're not. And I think I wouldn't want to go toe-to-toe with someone like that. I think, like in boxing, our strategy can't be meet you in the middle and just fight it out. We got to do a lot of moving around, bobbing, weaving. I think we've got to be smarter. And I think when I saw the talent in that room, we've got some very smart people, smart bureaucrats. I also spoke with our former Canadian ambassador to the United States, David McNaughton, who was the ambassador during the last Trump administration. Had a great chat with him yesterday, too. Smart guy, wise guy. And the old saying, measure twice, cut once. So sometimes emotionally we say certain things, but I think sometimes we'll think this one through, not rush to action when it comes to that, because it seems Trump's thoughts are on the tip of his tongue. And I think sometimes we got to think this one through. We have a lot of strengths and opportunities. I think we can do well if we play this one right.
And what was the conversation at the Premier's meeting around tourism and how to help cities like Niagara Falls that do rely heavily on tourism?
Well, tourism and anybody on the border. I was talking with Drew Dilkins, the mayor of Windsor, and we've become very close since COVID and all the different border issues, asylum seekers and the different challenges we've had. And we realize how important this is, but until there's stability in the market and confidence, there's not going to be great activity. Markets are doing okay, but people are holding on to their money. They're sitting on their wallets. They're not investing right now. They're not taking major trips. They're staying close to home. We need confidence and certainty. And right now, there's nothing in terms of confidence and certainty. And people need to feel good about decisions, whether it's their job, automotive industry, the impacts right now, the discussions that we're having, it's direct, and then there's indirect impacts. So a lot of people are nervous right now. They're worried about their mortgage. They're worried about their kids' educations. They're worried about food on the table. So when that happens, they're not taking the big trips to Niagara Falls. So we understand it's a symptom of a bigger problem that has to be solved at the highest levels. Once we get trade agreements in place, we're going to have confidence. There's going to be certainty, predictability. The markets are going to respond. And that's what everybody's waiting for, our leaders to lead. They're doing a great job. And we just need to be there to support them.
Well, I want to unpack that a little bit. We need confidence at the top. So what do you think that the federal government should be doing? We've talked about a trade deal needs to be figured out. But aside from that, what can Mark Carney do to show Canadians that they can be confident in the federal government? Sorry, I've listed every single one. But also that there is change that's going to happen, and that the tourism industry and people that own businesses and things like that can rely on the government to take the reins, and that they're going to be okay and we're going to get through this as a country.
Well, I take the temperature every day because I'm in the public everywhere. I'm at events. I talk to all sorts of people, and there's a lot of confidence in Mark Carney. Even people who were doubters before, big Poilievre supporters, have said, either they really like him or they say, I don't dislike him, or they're watching him. But so far, he's made, I think, great moves. He's taken some plays out of Poilievre's playbook, which I think shows humility and wisdom, because it doesn't have to be your idea. It just has to be a good idea. And the fact that he's utilizing these good ideas, he's listening to all the premiers like what he's saying, and he's not afraid to take action. The old saying, you got to break some eggs to make an omelet. And I love that. He's not afraid to break some eggs. And they're talking high level, big deals. They're passing big agenda items that are going to be nation building. We've got things the world wants. We've got oil. We've got these rare minerals. We've got lumber. We've got most of what the entire world wants. We just need to bring it to market. And maybe we've been a little lazy, complacent. I mean, it's hard not to, and the biggest economy in the world is right next to us. But I think it's a wake up for us that and there's going to be opportunities as well. Geopolitically, we need to play with everybody, not just our one partner. It's great to have them, but let's expand and not have all our eggs in the same basket.
Mayor Diodati, thank you so much for the time today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Theresa.